Okay, welcome everyone. We are going to do our second installation of the Clydesdale University. I am going to uh, share my screen here and get this going. On the phone, I have Monty Thompson, who's going to uh, kind of give us a little bit of a talking about silhouettes, kind of understanding our what we're kind of looking for. He's been sharing a lot of photos lately, so he's going to kind of go through some of these fundamentals in developing your eye for a really good Clydesdale silhouette. So, Monty, if you want to introduce yourself to everyone, for those who don't know you.
Sure. Monty Thompson. I operate a small Clydesdale operation in Gladstone, Manitoba, Canada. And I've been infatuated with these things since the early 90s. So try and raise a few folds every year and really have a soft spot for looking at photos and videos of fine Clydesdale. So I'll give you my opinion for what it's worth on some of these ones that Jerry's put on this slide for you.
Okay. So the first horse that we're going to look at, we're going to look at a few stallions, right? Kind of understanding what we're looking for in a stud horse and a masculine looking version of the Clydesdale. And our first horse is Ambassador, a horse that came from Sandy Now and kind of really started the tour stud in a big way. So Ambassador, Monty, what are your thoughts on him?
So the first look, something that we all have to keep in mind, the early photos that the Scottish farmer and the other publishers in Scotland were doing of the Clydesdale, some of them were doctored a little bit to make some of the things maybe look a little better than they actually were. But in this case, it looks like they might have added a little bit of hair and pastern to this guy, but he looks like a nicely balanced horse. In today's world, we'd probably want a little bit more extension to the neck, but he's a well-sprung, ribbed horse. Legs seem to be set nicely under him with a proper amount of set. Nice level croup to him. Looks like he's got a sharp ear and a good breedy head for a stallion. Below that, we've got Craigie Bow Ideal. Probably a little more of an elegant fronted horse, maybe a little bit longer back, but still the kind that's quite useful. The thing to keep in mind when we're breeding Clydesdales is that we don't always want to breed the same type to each other. Here's a couple of horses that will probably cross very well on the other's daughters. So certainly something that myself, if I'm depending on what the last stallion was, has something to do with what the next one needs to look like. So a couple of both nice, useful horses for sure, and horses that ended up breeding quite well for the breeders.
Okay, now we have two other ones. One kind of probably made a little bit more of an impact in the Shire horses than he did Clydesdales, and then the other one made a huge impact in the Clydesdale breed. So we have Johnson's Realization, and then we have Benefactor. So if you want to start with Johnson's Realization.
Yeah, so I'm guessing on the size of these rascals. To me, Johnson Realization looks like a really big, weighty horse. Maybe some people would find him a little softer in the face and maybe not as masculine as Benefactor, which is on the same slide. Benefactor probably a little bit smaller horse, I'm guessing, with a tighter body. Looks like he's got lots of adequate bone and hair, and again the pasterns maybe have been helped out with a little bit of handiwork. And it could be the same to say about Realization as well. But nicely set. Their legs, front legs, look to be fairly plumb and under them. Nice set on the hind leg, and good substance. Johnson Realization, extremely nice long croup to him, and certainly a full set of pants as well. I'm sure he's hired lots of big, useful horses.
Yeah, so if for those of you that are kind of students of Shires as well, Johnson's realization went to England under the pseudonym Quiexhill or Quixhill, however you want to pronounce it, What's Wanted, and kind of made a big impact in their breed as well. Benefactor really was known for his daughters and a few sons like Benedictine that also raised tons and tons of good mares. So uh, when Monty's talking, I'm kind of going with over the cursor, right? Like that spring of rib, that kind of depth of body, right? We want to see through the kidney, right, where their sheath is, that area, and then through what they call the heart girth, right down here. So both of these horses got a lot. Reefer Houston was a huge fan, obviously, of Johnson's realization. He thought he was the best stallion you've seen. So as a guy who won the Royal Winter Fair for I don't know 3 decades, take that for what it's worth. So now we're on to the mares here, and we got another one from Chapman's Heather Enchantress. So take it away, Monty.
Yeah, so we got Heather Enchantress and Classic Lady on this slide. Again, both great capacity mares. Um, you can look at the photo and see that they look feminine. They look like a mare. Um, Lots of nice bone, legs well set, good spring to the rib, nice tight body, not strung out, but the kind that would wear fairly well. Again, they've got the fancy legwork done. I don't know how much of it existed before, but they both look very attractive to me.
Mhm.
The kind of mares that you'd like to have a whole yard full of.
Right. And I mean, when we're talking about these type of mares, right, you look at that width of their hip and all that kind of stuff. Uh, there comes a lot of functionality and foaling with that as well. Okay, let's take
Yeah,
a
I mean, we're doing a little bit of guesswork on the
right,
width of it here, but certainly on
right.
the length, they look like mares,
Mhm.
that would have a constitution to look after themselves and while they're nursing a foal and do a good job on it as well. They appear to be.
Mhm. Now in this slide we have a more modern horse here from 2012 at the National Clydesdale Stallion Show, a mare called Dayton Miranda. And on the bottom we have a mare from the 1940s called Leading Lady.
Yeah, so a little bit different angles and types. Miranda's an easy mare to look at. Um, Probably one of the things, it's a color photo
Mhm.
and doesn't look like it's been doctored as well. So it
Mhm.
looks like a nice high hop on this gal. Um, Set nicely, lots of hair, um, feminine again. A little bit hard to tell on the angle of it, but certainly a very attractive, useful mare. Um, and if I remember correctly, could really handle her legs quite nicely.
Yeah, she was a good moving mare. They drove her quite a bit. She raised a lot of, you know, good brood mare too. Raised a lot of nice kind of foals. The same was to be said about reports from Leading Lady, right? That she was when she showed that day and won the Calder Cup, that she was a really beautiful moving mare. So, do you want to
Yeah.
talk a little bit
So
about her? Yeah.
again, leading lady, black and white photo and all the rest of it. But for the span of 60, 70 years between them, still a really nice, typey female of good size. I guess the ongoing thing that people will talk about is the length of neck.
Mhm.
And both of the mares appear to be adequate, but
Mhm.
not extreme. So that's one of the niceties that when you can get everything else that you like, then the neck's a little longer as well. That's a nice thing to add to it. You don't necessarily want to give up everything else just to get it.
Right, right. And
But
I,
yeah,
I'm struck too by these two photos of these mares. Like, right, we're we're decades apart, but yet we're still within the same realm of type. Right? So a good Clydesdale horse isn't really going out of fashion, right? It's building forward ideally, but the fundamentals are still the same.
very attractive and useful, both of them.
Mhm. Now we're going to go back
Yeah,
to the past a little bit here. We have a mare called Terrorby Memory, and then on the bottom we have kind of a Clydesdale legend, Kirkland Hill Queen of Carrot.
yeah. On memory, I'm not up to speed on a lot about her. I guess looking at the photo, she might be, um, maybe a little bit harder doing. Her hips would probably stick out a little bit further and maybe a little bit lighter in her pants. Looks like a lots of bone and stuff. Maybe not as sharp in the hind limbs as some of them, and maybe lacking the femininity in the set to her neck as the previous two mares had.
Mm-hmm.
Queen of Carrot was a gal that I never actually got to witness. I've seen several photos of her. Um, just a big weighty mare with tremendous amount of foot and hair. Everybody that ever talked about her said that when you heard her coming, she landed absolutely perfectly when her shoes would hit the concrete at the Royal Winter Fair on in the Horse Palace. Um, just a legend of a mare that won the Royal on several occasions. If there was a downside, I don't think she ever nursed a foal, so she wasn't able to replicate that for the breed. But you can see in this angle of this photo, probably what we would call an excellent set to the hind leg. A bit of her hair is broken off, but still you can see that it's just sits where you want it. And the front legs look like they're quite decent as well. Big, powerful mare, long neck, big bodied. Just that's why she's a legend.
Mm-hmm. So for our viewers, she won the Royal Winter Fair 14 times. She started the first time she won it as a 2-year-old. Then she had to skip a year as a 4-year-old, I believe. She had to stand reserved to Clifton Ellie Dean. She got kind of usurped one more time by a mare called Queen of the Shamrocks, but it's not like people will say, well, what was she competing against? Well, everything that Scotland could produce that was good, right? Dura Sweet, all the Dura Excelsior daughters that were coming over. She is a Dura Excelsior daughter, but you had Dura Douglas Delight. You had all these other slew of good mares that were coming over being imported, right? And she really wared so well. She kept going and going and going. And she also drove in all points of the hitch. She was just a really great all-around mare. So when you talk to some of the older breeders, especially from Canada, and say, "What was your favorite mare?" She's often on their list. So a really good one to kind of study and appreciate. Okay, so now I have a little ad here from Cowden Clydesdales. We have a father and a daughter here. We have Sandy No Ideal, and we have Cowden Permulia. uh, what would you like to say about these two?
So, good old stock horse. I'm not sure how old the mare is. She looks to be a filly
Yeah, I think she's
and
two. She was like two
a
in the
two-year
photo.
old. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it looks like a neat pasture ankle. Well set. Um, has a nice open look to her. Something that you want to keep in mind. You don't want a yearling filly to look like an 8-year-old mare. So they have to look like they have some maturity to them. In the case of this 2-year-old gal, she looks like that. She looks feminine but not finished. And that's how I like to have a young developing mare look, that they've got some room to go and that they match their actual age and that you haven't made them look over mature for their age. And a nice, big, useful stallion that did a great job, sired a lot of good offspring, and for a long time. Probably from appearance in the photo, we'd like him to be a little bit higher hawk
Mm-hmm.
than what he appears. The way that she's got her tail sitting over hers, we're not sure if it is or it isn't, because that's a little bit hard to tell in that. But yeah, no, nice, useful horses.
Right, like so. I think if we're looking at their silhouettes, right, you can see that the stallion's really putting a nice stamp on this filly, and that other the other filly that we saw, leading lady, is also a daughter of Sandy No Ideal. So he's really kind of stamping a certain kind of look on his horses. I'm also intrigued by this comment here that they have, right? Fashionably bred, big, thick, weighty stallions and colts for sale, commercial and show geldings, and mares and fillies, right? So they're focused on that substance, right? That weightiness. So you'll hear breeders talk about that body capacity. So speaking of weighty, we have a photo here of the first place stallion and three mares from the Royal Winter Fair from the Cooper family. And we have Dura Douglas Delight in here, Dura Sweet Melody. We have Green Dyke's Excelsior again. And I'm not quite sure who this last horse is, could be identified, but pretty good horse. So, Monty, what do you think? This is a different view here.
Yeah, yeah. So just your classic hind leg, this bunch from Cooper's. Um, like you say, there's for sure two Dura Excelsior daughters right in the middle. Not sure who the filly might be on the end. It looks very attractive, not as heavy haired as the others. And I think Green Dyke's Excelsior again was a grandson, was he?
A son. A son. Yeah, a son.
Pardon?
He was a son of Excelsior too.
Oh, was he? Okay. So
Mm.
there you go. Yeah, but so a great view of some, attractive hind legs, that's for sure.
You
And,
know,
the thick of their hips of the mares,
mhm,
especially Green Dyke's Excelsior, again, you can see isn't quite as thick as they are.
mhm.
And the youngster on the end has lots of thickness and looks to be probably a 2-year-old, I would say.
Right, right. It looks like she's going to grow into a pretty
Yeah,
decent mare. Okay, and so
yeah,
what now we
probably the Coopers probably single-handedly brought the presentation of Clydesdales in North America to a new level.
mhm,
And at this point in this picture, they were probably in mid stride, and they even bumped it up a cog or two after that for
right,
keeping the hair on them, having them in the right body condition. They were just magicians at it. They did a fantastic job. And some of the nicely presented ones today is based off of some of the things that Coopers did 30 and 40 years ago.
right, right. So now we have a photo, another lineup here. We got a young Dura sensation. We got that who's going to be mated to the one next to her. That's Dura Douglas Delight. We got a Kirkland Hill Lady Diana, and then we have a young Queen of the Roses on the left.
Yeah, everybody's dream herd.
Right.
Their sensation and Douglas Delight had 3 or 4 offsprings that were absolutely phenomenal. CIE Perfection as a horse that showed very well.
Mhm.
Ended breeding in Alberta for Dale Rosinski quite successfully. Um, One of the big mares of the breed was CIE Champagne Lady from that mating. I have no idea how high she got when she finished, but I seen her as a 3-year-old at the Royal and had an amazing high hawk, big high withered mare, very effective. Lady Diana, I believe, was their master stroke, and she's wearing a nice hind leg, neatly cut. She might not be just the way you want standing right now on the front legs, but it's Paul that looks like has a hold of her, so I'm sure he'd have her as right as he could get her.
Mhm.
And then Queen of the Roses, we've seen some fantastic pictures of her, and she was a model of a horse. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, so
But
some
the Roses at an Excelsior.
yeah. This one is Queen of the Shamrocks. Sorry, Queen of the Shamrocks.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. So
which
she was a Rose Hall favorite then.
Rose Hall favorite,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Uh,
All right. Yeah. So I never did get to see her, but again, any photo that you've seen of her, big mare with a beautiful hind leg, and as you indicated, in the prime of Queen of Carrick's life, the only mare that ever got ahead of her.
right, right.
Yeah.
We'll put up a photo of her, I think, from her 2-year-old victory at the Royal, but pretty impressive typed mare.
Yeah.
Um,
Do that.
so people are looking at the photos. So what is kind of your advice to them to kind of start training their eye, things to kind of really start to hammer into their head, really start to focus on uh, to build some knowledge on how to kind of look and select horses?
Well, the first thing that I like to do is look at balance. And if you're looking at a horse for balance, you can't do that standing in the barn alley because you're only going to be 3 or 4 feet away. So you're only going to be looking at pieces of a horse when you're looking at them in the barn alley. You got to get away from them for a distance so that you can analyze the whole beast from the tip of its nose right to its back feet and how everything flows. And from there, the same thing when you're watching the movement. You want to watch the movement from the side at a reasonable distance. You want to see them go from front to back, coming to and from you, as well as nice side motion. And we'll try and get some silhouettes as well of horses in motion in a photo as well as videos to make it easy. But basically, you want to get a look for a nice balanced horse, and then you want one that can travel well. And then hopefully what you were looking for in the balance comes over and is exhibited when they are on the move, and those things line up fairly well.
So one thing that if for those that came from kind of a light horse background or something like that, right, there's going to be uh, a big difference in kind of reorientating your eye into what kind of makes a better Clydesdale, because right, they're a street working horse. They're very different than a Welsh pony or a um, hunter horse, where like the back's a little longer, right? The hock's a lot lower, the cannon's a lot shorter. We're kind of wanting a little bit of the opposite here. So I would say keep looking through these photos, right? Keep kind of developing your eye. We'll try to put some photos of these horses, and as many as we can try to find, of good balanced horses on the move, the kind that you still want to try to raise today. Because part of this exercise that we're trying to do is, right, we need people that are going to want to raise these kind of useful mares, right? Uh, even if you're keeping one, two, three, try to keep these, nice type mares. They cost just the same amount to feed. Um, Sometimes they're cheaper to buy than the expensive hitch type mares that aren't very sound, and they're going to last you a whole lot longer, right? Uh, so
I
do
guess
you?
the thing to keep in mind
Mhm.
with the Clydesdale is the two main gaits are the walk and the trot. And so you want the legs to be set under the body to achieve that more so than you would an animal that was bred strictly to be an easy keeping plow puller,
Mhm.
which will probably have the front legs set further apart than where you'd want a Clydesdales. Where you Clydesdale, you like them to be under them so that when they're at a walk and a trot, at both those gaits, they can handle themselves quite neatly. The same thing with the hind legs, with the hocks tucked in rather than rolling over when they're on the move, and having them be able to gather them up and move fairly closely, but at the same time be able to bend their hocks and their knees at the same time, not just one or the other.
Right, right. Because I think that what some people do when they get into it, that gets them trapped, is that they say, well, I kind of want a horse that looks like a pulling horse, right? They have more substance, right? I want this kind of horse that I saw in the early 1800s versus the horse that you see after Baron of Bucclivy, right? Um, and I think that gets to be a little bit of a trap, because you're getting really stumpy legged horses. You're getting horses that are difficult to keep clean. They get scratches, they get fluid in their joints, they get all this stuff. Where if you're going for this type that we're looking at, these Cooper mares, this type is they're just better on their joints, right? They're better on their limbs, their bones better, and you're not getting as many health problems. Do you have anything to add to that about the kind of stumpy legged horses we see and kind of the
Yeah.
pitfalls of that? Yeah.
On the one thing that I would disagree a bit, to
Hmm.
me, there shouldn't be a big discrepancy between a good breeding horse and a good driving horse.
Right.
We created some excuses for that,
Mm-hmm.
and that we'll say a horse that is gutless and spindly and bare-haired is a driving horse.
Mm-hmm.
No, it is a gutless, spindly, bare-haired horse that's being driven. And so the same can hold true, that you can have a horse that looks good in a halter class and still wear harness and still move
Mm-hmm.
like a draft horse should. So I think we got to get so that we don't create places for the ones that are inferior and redefine them. Either it's a nice draft horse, or, as I indicated, it's one that's less than desirable because it misses several of the things that we were trying to lay out here.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember when there was talks, of creating different types of draft horses, right? Like how Welsh ponies have A, B, C, and D, right? Kind of create different types of horses. Somebody, a breeder, stood up and said, "There's only one type of Clydesdale, good, or they're bad," right? There's just a
Yeah,
type. And
that's right. And if you're somebody that wants a good little horse, you're welcome to that. And if you're somebody that wants a good big horse, you're welcome to that as well. And anywhere in the middle, right?
Mhm.
I agree totally. But it has, like you say, in the Welsh ponies, there's four different variations. And when you see them, three of them are significantly different.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. So, no, I agree. Good is good.
Mhm.
If your preference is good and little, you can find those. And if your preference is good and big, there still are some of those, although not being bred for as much as they maybe were in years past. I think it's probably time we return to that a little more.
Right. So that's kind of part of this project, right? Is that we need all of you to breed the good ones, no matter what, because we're shrinking in our breeder pool, and there used to be a lot more smaller guys, 3, 2, 1 full a year, but raising good ones that really kind of help everybody kind of in the breed, because we are kind of collaborative. We need different horses from different people. If you look at these pedigrees, they're coming from 50, 60 different breeders when you do an extended pedigree, right? They're not coming from one guy. So part of this is like if you are concerned about numbers of the Clydesdale breed, and we probably should be, because there is some concerns, right? Uh, that breeding good ones does more for the breed than just crossing whatever to whatever. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, Monty? Like breeding horses to kind of move the breed forward versus just propagating, right? When we're thinking about just creating genetic diversity or something, and we're just kind of multiplying horses. Like what's the pitfall of just propagation?
Well, you're producing something that nobody wants. Um, it's the main thing, right? And it's not that you have to walk the way the wind blows and do the same thing that your neighbor is. I mean, one of the benefits of the smaller breeders living in various parts of North America gives you some diversity in the pedigree, so that there's some forks in the family trees.
Mhm.
If people are being assisted a little bit with their selections, and if the people helping them select also help them with their matings and letting them know when they're hitting the mark and letting them know when they're not, is a big help. And even more so that something like the slides and stuff that you're putting together might assist people with is some of the things to look for. And in a later version, maybe some of the things to look at that you don't want to include in your operation.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, so Monty says we'll take some baby steps, right? Like let's just kind of let's look at some good ones, let's get some development, let's not get overwhelmed because when we are breeding Clydesdales, there's tons of minutia, right? Like uh, little details on both the hocks, and we'll spend maybe a whole slideshow just looking at hock structure, in hair, in differences in movement, neck length, back. All these things have lots of different variations, and things where we sometimes say, well, what sort of thing do we want to live with, right? Because they're bringing something else to the table. So we're just going to kind of, for these few ones, look at some really good examples, and then we'll start to kind of pick them apart. But keep training your eye on these better examples, because that's going to be useful a little bit down the line, and even when you're making your breeding selections for this year, right? Like, compare to the horses you have at home to some of these horses that we're looking at. Are they as balanced? Are they fitting that same silhouette? Just kind of start with the big picture, and then we'll kind of whittle it down to look at some of the more minutia. So anything else you want to add, Monty, before we sign off? This is a nice, quick, good presentation with some good information. Anything else you have?
No, right. Thanks for putting together some slides of some attractive horses that are pretty easy to look at.
Okay, so we'll end it there, and I'll get this uploaded, and we'll see you next time. And in the meantime, after I put up these videos, I'll find a few different videos of horses on the move too that we're going to look at, and then post them and share them to the group, just so we can kind of see these horses in action too. So it's the silhouette, and then like how that affects movement. So signing off until now, and we will talk to you all soon.